Hello and welcome to another episode of Next Generation's First Generation. I'm your host, Sascha Shouties.
And I'm Patrick Delmore.
Woohoo! We want to welcome you to Season 5, Episode 9, which is A Matter of Time. What we're going to do is go ahead and queue up your DVD, Netflix, or whatever you got, your Paramount. And we're going to give you the countdown of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and go ahead and push play. And we will just jump right into the audio commentary of this episode.
Sounds like a plan. So, 5, 4, 3,
2, 1.
All right.
Captain's log, stardate.
There's the captain talking about his log. Has he gotten any splinters from it? We don't know.
The resulting dust cloud, very well created.
So our setup for this episode is it's a fairly standard for this show deal where there's a planet that's going to be destroyed, or their environment is going to be destroyed by a bombardment of asteroids, and then something wacky is going to come along to mess it up. But it's a little bit scary because it's similar to the climate crisis that our planet is going through. Although,
yeah,
would you join me on the bridge, please?
Well, I was kind of wondering about that. It's like, was the climate crisis even in the writer's mind when they came up with this episode?
To be a coincidence.
Well, it was something we were talking about. We had, the big Earth Day in 1990.
Not unless another asteroid decides to play.
And this was only a year after that. So it was on everybody's mind.
Well, I remember, let's see, this was in 91. So I was still living in Columbus at the time. And I remember everyone was talking about the hole in the ozone layer back then. But nobody was really talking about asteroids slamming into the planet.
No, the idea is that the debris from the asteroids will cool the planet too much. I like that the colony that they go to is New Seattle.
Oh, this is a great joke coming up where they encounter a mystery shuttlecraft in space. They can't scan it, but they say, "Captain Picard, please move over."
They want you to move over, sir.
The Enterprise will not move.
Yeah, he figured out how. That's weird because it feels like, Picard would just move.
Yeah.
He was in the path of something that couldn't get out of the way and just let it scrape up against the shields of the deflector.
Well,
the deflector would just push it out of the way.
There's our Matt Fewer right there. Now I want to tell you something about this character that he's playing, Mr. Rasmussen. This was originally written for Robin Williams. They wanted to bring Robin Williams in. They kind of talked about it, and he wrote the screenplay. Rick Bierman wrote the screenplay for it, and then Robin Williams said, "No thanks." Mostly because his wife was like crazy pregnant, 8.5 months along. Also, I think he was either just about to do Hook or he had just gotten off of Hook. I'm not available to do this right now, and that's how it kind of came to Matt.
Well, Matt Frewer was more of a TV guy. Well, of course, Robin Williams was famous for being Mork, but Matt Frewer was famous in more recent history for being Max Headroom.
That is correct. Was he in any other Trek?
Any other Trek?
Yeah.
I don't believe so. It's funny the big comedians that missed out on being part of Star Trek, because Eddie Murphy had a part written for him in Star Trek 4.
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
Robin Williams. Can we bring the volume down on the episode a little bit, Sasha?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was so loud. There we go.
Really kind of scrape, but every time we stop talking, it gets really loud.
Ah, okay.
I don't know if that's how it's recording on your thing, but
no, we're good now.
Okay, good deal. But yeah, I think Robin Williams would have done a better job of this coming off as more empathetic. Robin Williams is a little bit more likable. Frewer is doing kind of it's got a little bit of a Jeffrey Combs, a little bit of a Jim Carrey to what he's doing. This would have been a great part for Jeffrey Combs.
Yes, it would have. Well, so this character, he needs to be a little deceivious and just a little bit sketchy. Robin Williams doesn't really come across that unless you take into account Final Cut or a couple of his other stranger movies.
Yeah, the later stuff that he did where he was playing a sinister guy. But it's weird because it's like he's this con man that nobody has any choice but to believe. And it's just, I guess Guinan was somewhere else that day because she would have shut the whole thing down. Although I do like that Troy is suspicious of him. But still, because she can't prove that what he says isn't true, they still have to go along with what this guy's doing.
Yes.
And just super, super annoying.
Well, I really like the premise of this plot where, spoilers, you've watched a lot of Star Trek. This guy's actually from the past and not from the future, which is a nice twist, to tell you the truth. And for a person in the past to fake their way through the future probably would be easy enough if you weren't far enough out that you were so completely removed from all cultural references. Everything's vague and you just kind of rely on reading the room.
Yeah, and he's good at that.
And he's doing a lot of misdirection too. So whenever people try to dig into who he is, he's like, hey, what are you doing? What's this over here? How big is this room? What's going on? And, he's taking paces or measuring or kind of making fun of their behaviors as if this is, oh, you silly Commander Riker, you. How could you?
It's what a good psychic does when people come into their office. Although it bugs me that Crusher likes him. I think they were going through kind of a thing where Crusher got excited by any man that came on board the ship.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I think that started out with that guy they found by the name. They called him John. He had amnesia.
Yeah, John Doe. Yeah. The Trill guy, of course.
Well, it's it's okay to have fun and to have relations with the folks that come by and just hang out. Wow, that was a really nice smile of Picard there. He kind of broke character for a sec. I don't know if you caught that. It almost looked like a chuckle.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of facial expressions that are unusual for Picard in this.
Well, remember, season 5 is when they start doing all the behind the scenes emotions.
It might be that. I don't know.
Yes.
And what I mean by behind the scenes emotions is, what does it look like when two people are just hanging out in the turbo lift? It doesn't do anything to help the story, but it just kind of one or two sentences to kind of help deepen the breadth of the character, I guess you say, widen the breadth of the character.
Kind of plasticized titanium mesh. We've nothing like it on record, at least not until now.
So they're doing an analysis of the shuttle.
I do appreciate your caution. I share it.
But it's like they really need to be working on the problem with the planet, with the asteroids, and not on this thing.
I realize that
it's a fun distraction, but you'd think they would have some more junior engineers that could mess with that.
That would have been the Lower Decks episode where the captain just kind of turns to the junior officers and say, watch this guy, keep him out of trouble, let us know if there's a problem. We're going to focus on this planetary holocaust that's about to happen.
Speaking of, have you had any impression of Star Trek Prodigy? Have you looked at that yet?
Oh, I only watched the first 15-20 minutes of the trailer. So the gentleman is trying to escape the prison, but he got caught, and now the female lead has to go talk to him. And
I haven't made up my mind about it in 2 episodes yet.
Well, I got a Clone Wars vibe from it, to tell you the truth.
Little bit. Clone Wars, Bad Batch.
I'm kind of looking forward to see what they did with Janeway, because I guess Janeway gives a very succinct description of what the Federation and Starfleet is. Now, yes. I've only read this. I didn't watch it, but in the reviews, I guess Janeway just says, oh, well, Starfleet's the explorers and the Federation is the government.
Yeah.
In assuming that you know whether or not I am still...
But she's not what I thought she was. I thought she was going to be the emergency command hologram. I love that he thinks Data's going to clean his hands for him. But Data would have to be used to that, too.
For the concierge service? Well,
yeah.
People always treat Data a little strangely. It all kind of depends on how they relate to technology.
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir.
So we don't know when in the timeline Prodigy happens in yet. It is, I mean, obviously it's post Voyager, but I'd like to see this guy's ship show up again, which could happen like either on Strange New Worlds or even land somewhere in what's it called? Lower Decks. This whole episode has the feeling of a Lower Decks storyline.
Yeah. Oh, they brought out the season 1 and 2 uniforms for the science, the civilian scientists.
Because, like we said, it wouldn't be the senior officers that would be dealing with that guy. He'd be kind of trying to force his way onto it. They'd have, assigned him a liaison or whatever.
Decades trying to avoid any...
I love that, all their scientists are like, but I have a beard and I'm going bald. I'm a very erudite man, Captain. Why does this have to happen to us? Bad things shouldn't happen to good people.
Excuse me, Dr. Mosley.
And here in this episode, they inadvertently explained how global warming works to kids. And I remember hearing this and thinking, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
The conversation is they're talking about releasing CO2 in the atmosphere for the planet to heat up, but that would take more time than what they have for this emergency.
Professor.
It's like the Futurama. Oh, so global warming never happened. Well, it did, but nuclear winter canceled it out.
Now, Rasmussen is amazingly calm for being around an alien that he's never met before.
As I promised, here are your assignments.
Well, let me dial that back. We don't know if he's traveled to other times. All we know is that he showed up on this ship.
Yeah. But in the 22nd century, they did know about the Klingons, and they were definitely the baddies.
Was he from the 22nd?
Yes.
Oh.
So he's from the Enterprise era.
Oh, okay. That's why he's so comfortable with spaceflight.
Yeah.
Okay, yep. 22nd century New Jersey. For some reason, I thought he was like someone from our era.
No.
Or just a little further out.
He bought a time machine from somebody who said they were from or he stole a time machine from somebody who said they were from the 24th century.
On a 22nd century vessel.
They hadn't perfected quarantine.
Oh.
You probably saw some surgical masks and gloves.
Isn't that fascinating?
And what he wants to do with this is try to reverse engineer all of the stuff that they have on the Enterprise, which, I mean, if he's good enough to reverse engineer all of that, you think he'd be able to come up with something good to make on his own. But
what about you?
yes, there's a cool alien behind him there.
Progress in the last 200 years.
But the guy drinking from the glass?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Before there was warp drive, Humans were confined to a single sector of the galaxy.
I do have to say, though, that we get a very interesting point of view of these characters and what they think, even though they're not filling out these questionnaires. Like, it makes sense that Beverly is kind of a nerding out on doctor stuff. Well, she is a doctor, but it's nice to see that. I would love to see Worf and him get into conversations about battles. That would actually be pretty valuable information. I know he's just there for technology, but understanding the political outcome.
They do have phasers in the 22nd century on Enterprise.
Oh yeah, pulse rifles.
That's right.
And they did have a handheld phaser.
This Worf is saying they didn't exist, but maybe they just told they didn't.
The forms I need you to complete shouldn't take anything more than a couple hours.
We're kind of busy here, but tomorrow would probably
Hey,
be better.
could you fill out, a couple of hours worth of these questions I have for you? What is your favorite color?
How does your visor work? What does the red light mean? What does the yellow light mean?
How do I restore default settings?
Yeah.
Man, David's fast.
I love that they thought that they would have these that you'd be able to have these consoles that if the power just went out, that were touch screens where if the power just went out, the whole thing would be useless until you went in and got manual switches and stuff. I just watched Dune today, and it's kind of cool because everything has like switches and buttons, all the planes and stuff.
Oh, there you go.
Well,
I think that there will be some day where there's just going to be some sort of power source built into the tech, no matter what. Good example, new hybrid car of mine. It does not have a standard 12-volt battery like all cars. It pulls right from the main battery pack. And the only way you can really charge the starter motor, if you leave the car on too long without you remember how you could kind of turn the key and let the AC run with the engine off?
Yeah.
Well, that would really drain the batteries quickly. But since you don't have a backup battery, all you can do is kind of charge these capacitors, just in case the car completely dies. It can still turn over the engine once in order for it to kind of limp home, more or less. So I'd imagine, with these touchscreens example that you gave, is that, I'm sure that they've got some kind of emergency power somewhere where if everything's out, there's probably going to be at least one button that lights up where if you hit it, they'll start giving you access to things you need to turn the ship back on.
My understanding was that there are areas in main engineering where it is, buttons and switches and cranks and things, but you would need to have that.
All we need now is an open channel to data.
on the bridge and stuff. What we always see here is they'll call down and be like, Jordy, can you give us 20% more power? It's it'd be a lot more effective if you could do that from where you're sitting.
And we're shooting at the ground.
That's based on how old ships used to work.
Yeah. That's something that didn't make sense to me as a child, was why are they calling down to the engine room when they can do the same thing right there?
Well, because on the Titanic, none of the actual controls, or at least not for speed or anything like that, were up at the helm at all. You had the captain at his steering wheel, but if he needed, the ship to go faster, that he had to call down and have them, shovel on more coal and hit switches and stuff. You saw that it was way below decks.
Watch, Worf's got the more coal button right there on the left side.
More dilithium. You send Ensign Steve down to the dilithium locker.
Oh, Steve.
Elevated CO2
Did we ever
levels at 20
determine if
kilometers.
Jordy has an
Now you're
extra
talking.
visor
We've got some
laying
new
around?
temperatures coming in.
I'm sure that he probably does. I
Correction
would
done.
imagine they can that visors can be replicated.
Now that graphic on the window, or sorry, on the computer screens behind Jordy and the scientist remind me of this old game from the 90s called Sim Earth.
Yeah.
Giving us what we need.
And so you had this orbital view of the planet. So you could just see, you know, the one side profile at a time, but you could rotate the planet around. And you had to manipulate the environment to make life grow or change or become something else.
Indescribable.
There was before the Sims, it was Sim City, Sim Ant.
Yeah, I love Sim Ant.
He's after more than a history lesson.
Sim Earth.
What is it? What are you getting from him?
What happened to this guy? Did he get
It's
attacked
like
by
he's trying
Data's
to
cat?
confuse us, misdirect us.
Could be.
You see his leg? It's all scratched up.
Well, that certainly was exciting, wasn't it?
Professor, is everything all right? Are you well?
Yes, couldn't be better. Thank you. I just
Another good-looking lower decks guy there, and the sitting down on the
credit to that uniform.
that guy right there. He looks like he could be
No, please, counsel.
a spin-off series.
Appreciate you remaining.
Yeah, Boimler's dad. Although, Boimler would probably be in high school at this point.
Yeah, how old is Boimler anyway? I would
Well,
imagine
no,
they're all in their
probably
20s.
21, 22. So he's
You don't like me very much, do you?
I
um
you, Professor.
Keep your
he's
eyes
like
open.
10.
You'll be telling your grandchildren how you were there at Penthera 4.
Okay, so here's the first fatal flaw that this guy made. And I picked up on this
But you don't.
one of the first times I watched it too, before I knew he was from the past, was
That's what they all said.
why is always foreshadowing and building everybody up and gaslighting people? Even though I didn't know the term gaslighting as a kid, I did know when someone was trying to bolster my enthusiasm for their own purposes.
Right.
And so that's kind of a tell that this guy just quite isn't there.
A little bit sneaky, a little bit eeky.
You're right. I don't trust you.
Oh, yep. You just turned on Deanna's Stranger Danger.
Well,
Mhm.
you two are finally getting along.
Well, it didn't work out with the brunette. Let me try the redhead.
Thank you.
Why don't you try Baroness?
And another thing too, this guy could have probably just went to the Replimat and cleared it out with
What else
just
can I show you?
ordering up a whole bunch of replicated tricorders and tools and everything else, and no one probably would have noticed.
No.
Right.
Curious like that. I mean, you're.
Why get it for free when you can steal it?
Barrel light level.
Why tell the truth when a lie will do?
Yep. He's a con man.
If anything,
I understand.
I wonder,
You're different. You're
had he just gone in and said, I'm from the past. I developed this technology. I'm afraid to share it with you, but I'm interested to see what you guys got going on now.
Whenever I travel back, I meet
The
It would have,
temporal rules, they would have had to kick him off. And I mean, that's what they end up doing is they just drop him off at a star base so that somebody that's trained to deal with people from the past can deal with him.
You're not supposed to be influencing.
oh,
me.
there we go.
Remember?
Strike two.
And
She's turning him down,
Yeah, you're out of there.
and she's feeling influenced.
What's funny is that you can tell
I could be your
like the characters don't like him, but that the actors are really vibing with him.
Oh, yeah.
They're doing all the physical stuff together with, him blocking people's way and how they're able to sidestep him and stuff. Like if somebody was really doing that to you, you would not be able to have as restrained of a reaction as everybody here is having.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of questions did he have?
I love how Beverly just dropped a reference point for
He said he wanted to see if we had a grasp of
Futurama. Remember where Fry goes back in time and becomes his own grandfather?
Yep.
So Beverly was saying, well, how do you know that I'm not your great-great-great-grandmother? Which kind of alludes to the whole the delta wave paradox. of becoming your own
We've also got some
grandparent.
volcanic activity, pretty severe.
He's like, Wesley didn't have kids. He went into a weird zone dimension.
Sure, Captain.
I guess he came back from. I'm finally going to start listening to Star Trek Coda this
Those
week.
were pretty big, sir.
The wrap up for the novels.
35 on the Richter scale. We're starting to see some volcanic plumes, Captain.
I wouldn't mind seeing Wesley turn up on lower decks.
More eruptions.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he did.
Yeah.
They seem to be dragging everybody out.
Lab, sir.
On screen.
Heck, I saw LaForge, Riker, and somebody else advertising an iPhone app for Star Trek.
Oh yeah.
Where they were like in these made-up bridges and they were giving orders and commanding ships in the game.
I love the idea that the cast of The Next Generation is just like a band that gets together and hangs out all the time.
Though one of the few times where you actually enjoy hanging out with your work buddies.
Yep.
Are the coordinates of the phaser drilling sites.
Well, they just realized that they drilled too close to the mantle and now it is collapsing.
Sort them out.
Not good.
They're killing the people. Killing the people when trying to help the standard Star Trek way.
All about the Star Trek with you people, isn't it?
Hi, we like to walk elbow to elbow.
Yeah, it's like it'd be funnier if he was doing stuff like, "This is interesting. How often do the two of you walk next to each other in this corridor?"
Music? Yes, sir. Mozart's
Oh yeah, he's got all of these different songs playing at once, which I like that idea because it's like that's something people will do now, where they've got like a TV show on and a podcast simultaneously.
You think you can thin it out a bit?
Can you listen to audiobooks or podcasts at like 2x speed or something like that?
I don't like to do that. I would if it was like for, studying for a class or learning lines for a play or something. I might do it, but even then I'd be working.
When I listen to German audiobooks, I will play with the speed, either slow it up or speed it up or slow it down, depending on how educated I am at the time with the language.
Are you reading stuff in German too, or just listening to the language?
Just listening to the language.
Only 4 today?
I am assisting Commander.
No, I'm a 21st century digital boy.
Yay, digital boy, digital boy.
I don't know how to live, but I got a lot of toys.
Yep, I hear that.
2,000 words.
I didn't know that. Oh, is that Data's Robin Hood fencing outfit there in the back?
I missed all that. It's like he's got a foil in there. He's got like a phrenology deal.
Valuable to myself and other.
I mean, we got to see all the stuff that he had on his desk at the end of Nemesis.
Certainly.
Mhm.
But
As long as it's before 09.
I always thought, his big things he was sentimental about were Yar and this is his. This just occurred to me. This is Data's office that we're in, not his quarters.
There were no errors.
I thought they were the same.
Variance must be no more than
No.
0.06 terawatts.
Well, I don't see any other choice. We'll continue to run the
Well,
numbers
is the
down
cat
right
there?
now.
That's
Come up
the
with
big
anything
question.
different. Better inform the captain of the good news.
Deal him a tricorder.
Really? You're gonna steal
Which you
a
suppose is gonna be
freaking
your first.
tricorder from a walking, talking security camera?
The good news.
I hadn't thought about this before, but it's like, it would make sense that Data would have an office where people could
With a modified phaser
go in and meet with him.
Oh, yeah.
And Riker as well, and Troy has one, but
with one exception.
and Geordi probably has a little compartment there off of engineering.
Plasma. Absorb.
But we never see Riker have an office.
Turn the Enterprise into a lightning rod. Precisely, sir.
Well,
Bad news.
we run into this
Phaser
in
discharges are as little as
Deep
0.06
Space Nine and
terawatts.
Voyager, where
Cause a
we'll see a
cascading
couple of
exothermal
people's
burst.
offices, but not everybody's. So, like, we see Tuvok's office, but we never see Chakotay's, or we see Odo's office, but we never see Kira's.
Yeah, there'd be a central area where
Usually it takes LaForge's plan to the leaders of
what's it called? Security would be located on the Enterprise.
I'm really surprised that DS9 doesn't have an engineering. That they never had a set for that. It was just a whole bunch of guys in jumpsuits covered in grease working behind a bulkhead somewhere.
Well, engineering and ops were the same thing on the station. Operations control had all of that stuff there.
Maybe tens of thousands will die.
That's how the Cardassians built it.
That'd be a shame. Yes, it would. It would be quite a shame. So,
so this is where Picard practically begs him to tell him what's going to happen.
Extremely critical.
But again, it's like they do a good job of making this sound like Picard. That's not really something Picard needs to do.
So
He would make the decision to take the risk where
could die.
if he screws up, like,
Not if you were to help me.
if what goes wrong one way, thousands of people will die. If it goes wrong another way, millions of people will die.
I'm not.
And I feel like this isn't the first time he's had to make a choice like that.
But at the same time, there are 20 million lives down
Well,
there.
it's a paradox. We see the same thing in other
What will happen?
prophecies, for example, in Deep Space Nine, where you have this comet that went through the wormhole, and everybody was afraid that whatever Sisko did, he would do it wrong and basically destroy the wormhole, etc., etc. And his solution was also the same as Picard's: is I'm going to move forward as if I did not have this external information.
Yep.
Because if I second guess myself, then the mistake would be made.
It would have been irresponsible of me not.
And that's always the mistake, is to second guess especially in a situation like that, to second guess your intuition.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah. Oh, well, it's the gambler's folly in all great television tragedies. And it is the Star Trek canon. Trust your gut. Stick to your guns.
You'd easily conclude that you tried your solution and it succeeded. So you confidently try again. No harm in that. But what if I were to tell you they all died? What then? Obviously, you decided not to make the same.
What are you going to do if everybody dies?
I mean, this would be a fun conversation for him to have with Guinan.
The next Adolf Hitler or Khan Singh.
Because he could be like, I know that you have an understanding outside of time. Can you tell me? And she would have said the same thing. It's like, yeah, Picard, what if I told you they all died? What would you do then?
Real. Surely you see that.
I see it all too well. But you must see.
Even the great Mr. Rogers was on an adult show, and it was on Charlie Rose. And Charlie Rose was like talking about how sad it was that somebody at this college in Philadelphia had committed suicide, jumped out of a window. And he's like, I just think, what if somebody had like stopped her and bought her a sandwich? And Mr. Rogers' response was, and what if she had jumped anyway?
What I do know is that here today, one way millions of lives could be saved. Now, isn't that incentive enough?
Everyone dies, Captain.
You can still do the right thing and not get the result you want.
All of you up here is
Yeah. Well, that's Picard's fallback. It's a meme of many a chord is saying, well,
I like that shit. Somebody, I just noticed this watching it now, did a lot of work on looking at like the models and the paintings and stuff, which is smart because it's about a guy that is there to look at stuff like that.
We have disregarded that directive. More than one occasion.
So if you were to travel back in time and you met somebody and had a very real conversation as these two gentlemen are doing, would you perceive that person as already dead who just hasn't died yet?
Isn't it possible that you haven't
Ooh,
to make an exception?
that's a really good question.
And if that's the case, do your rules of empathy apply? Now, you can, whether you empathize or not is kind of besides the point, but how you act and interact with that individual is dictated by your context of the situation. So if he had no empathy, he could probably do whatever he wanted to Picard and leave because there's no consequences to him. I mean, it might change the future, but not his future.
Where, Professor, if you went to an era where somebody might be of historical importance, but you didn't know, and it was like, if by talking to them, do they die in a different way than they're supposed to die? Because it's like, Lincoln or Kennedy, like, what's going to happen to those guys. But like some dude in the, some general in the Crimean War that you might not have heard of, and you're in, they're dead. Yeah, they're dead in the future anyway. But what if they were supposed to live another 20 years and you basically only lived another 2 minutes?
We just got to tie into Geordi's atmospheric sensors.
So you've made your choice after all, and without my help.
Oh, on the contrary, Professor, you were quite helpful.
I don't understand. I don't understand Picard's reversal. I mean, I do like that he had the conversation, but I don't think he really needed to tell Rasmussen, "Oh, thank you very much. Your conversation was helpful, and here's why." Blah 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 blah. I think Picard would have arrived to that no matter what.
That's a nice thing to do. If somebody gives you advice to show that you're grateful for it, especially the state of mind Picard was in at the time.
Now this is kind of cool. We're gonna turn the Enterprise into a gigantic lightning rod. They're gonna take all that energy and shoot it into space.
We're only gonna get one shot at this.
I still don't understand what they're doing, and I'm an adult.
Yeah.
This technobabble just kind of went a little too far. It's a bit unrealistic even for Star Trek.
Mr. O'Brien, stand by to transport.
Excuse me, Captain, but I can be of a lot more help down here. We're gonna have to compensate for the density.
Are you sure you want to stay down there, Geordi? You might be burned to a crisp, and we need you up here to do your job on the ship.
And LaForge stayed below. And you're like, man.
There's no guarantee it's going to fail, Captain. I'd like your permission to remain here on the surface.
Now, Rasmussen would not be able to have this conversation with Geordi because Geordi would quickly interrupt him and orient to what's happening right now and the choices he can make.
Yeah.
He'd pull out those legitimate on-the-scene leader kind of conversations rather than these deep philosophical leader conversations that Picard would have.
Data's makeup was really good in this episode.
Oh, yeah. We're shooting the planet some more. And again, this whole catching the atmosphere on fire business just makes no sense whatsoever.
That's what the Silver Surfer did to show the Fantastic Four that Galactus was coming. It blew us a kiss. A blue kiss.
The blue lightning effect that they love so much. It keeps coming back. Over and over. Yeah, you're right. His makeup is pretty good. On point. I was really disappointed to know that he was a smoker.
Brent Spiner?
Yeah.
That surprised me too, because his voice remains, fairly, pretty much the same. I always think of, when guys who have smoky sounding voices is Leonard Nimoy. That's why nobody that does Spock can really sound exactly like Spock, because Leonard Nimoy had such a distinct smoker's voice.
Mm-hmm. They did Leonard McCoy pretty good.
Yeah.
He kind of had that gravelly voice too.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine you get a role and they say, okay, we're going to pay you a lot of money to do everything perfectly right for this character, but you need to get in about 5 pack years worth of cigarettes in the next week. So Go down to 7-Eleven, clean them out,
And you did it all without any help.
and then we'll do the shoot.
Let's run.
We'll just paint your larynx with tar, and when we're done, we'll scrape that tar off. Feel real good.
I would have really loved to see in this episode the first actual sign that this guy was full of it, and that they had a conversation of, well, how long do we let this guy go on?
Yeah.
How long do I pretend that he is who he says he is? So to con the con man.
Curious till the end, Captain? You can't be serious, Picard. We've been through this more than once.
He underestimates them so much. He's like, I'm going to steal data too.
Yeah. So this shuttlecraft is from Final Mission. Believe it or not.
I will. With explosives.
They just reuse it over and over and over again.
Decoration on it where how he gets in and out and putting his hand on there and making it open. It's funny because we've now seen technology in the 23rd century on Discovery that looks a lot more impressive than this 24th century time machine.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem with remaking shows, is that you've got to update everything so it's believable, but it kind of blows away the original expectation of the level of technology.
I like that, though. That's like before they came up with the concept of a QR code. It's like what the old, what those huge scanners that you used to run your groceries over looked like.
So Data and Rasmussen are in the 1990s laser tag office.
Yeah.
Oh, they had Worf's dagger in there too.
It would have been funny if they just started playing house music the second they got in there. The background music for this show. Door opens. It's Electric Car by Poddington Bear.
And the temporal distortion that
Data has a great line in here where he says, I believe your hand will open this door whether you're conscious or not.
Yeah. And good for him after the whole I want you to dry my hands for me thing.
Well, you got to keep in mind, this isn't the first time someone's tried to steal Data while getting into a shuttle pod. Remember when he was picked up by those collectors?
Yeah. He would be a giant liability to have in space at all.
What are your intentions, Professor? Well, thanks to your captain.
I mean, he can defend himself, but people would still be coming for him all the time.
The notion of returning with these trinkets I'd invent about.
Let's see.
Now,
I'm trying to see if I can make a list of everything that was stolen. I saw a pad and some medical equipment. Obviously, the phaser, one of Worf's knives, which doesn't make any sense. Because if he's only looking for technology,
an actual Klingon knife when Klingons are barely in contact with Earth, you get a mint for it. Sell it to a museum.
There you go.
Your handprint will open this door, whether you are conscious or not.
Oh, here we go. I love Memory Alpha. Among the items that Rasmussen tried to steal are a visor, tricorder, pad, isolinear chips, a Dakatang, I can never pronounce it, that's the dagger, and the Type 2 phaser, and several small devices.
Trying to make my history.
Beverly just gave him a whole "I'm so disappointed in you" look.
I'm so glad I didn't hook up with that guy.
Yeah.
Just let me back in there. We'll forget the whole thing.
We're going to make sure this guy is history.
That's a fake version of him.
Yeah.
I believe you will find all of the missing items in the vessel, sir.
Doctor. Very nice performance.
Oh, don't act so hurt. You knew he was a fraud from the very beginning. Oh, wow.
Claims to be a 22nd century inventor, Captain.
Pity you weren't a bit more inventive.
Well,
disappeared, we might never have suspected you.
What are the consequences of keeping someone from the past in the future? Now they've just rewritten their own futures. Unless it was always determined that he go into the future and is stranded there. So,
I really must get back in that pod.
This may be the Time Variant Authority might have something to say about this.
You can't do this.
Well, I think they're taking him to the Days from Institute. I'm sure that.
There goes his ship. Oh.
Yeah, it'd be funny if we low-key showed up at this point. Tom Hiddleston would have been a little guy, though.
Yeah. He is kind of teeny.
Oh, Professor,
I mean, he would have been a kid.
welcome to the 24th century.
Well, we saw a Doctor Who Star Trek crossover.
Yep.
In the comic book series.
Yep.
Where the Doctor and the Enterprise fight both the Borg and the Cybermen.
That was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
And they also have a flashback where they meet the original crew meets the Cybermen with the Fourth Doctor. Well, I like this episode quite a bit. I realize we didn't talk about it as much as we could have, but it is a favorite of mine.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I'd say 4.5 out of 5 stars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would have to agree. I've always enjoyed watching this. I enjoy watching it just for the wit. The cat and mouse game that's obviously played out very poorly because I mean it's television from the 90s. But there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff going on in here, and I find it amusing. So yeah, about 4 out of 5. All right. Well, what do we have coming up next, my friend?
It's gonna be,
I think
the one where Alexander comes on board the ship.
Oh, we get to see what a great father Worf is. Worf and Alexander have a difficult time as well as adjusting to one another. A situation. Oh my goodness. I can't even read the rest of it. What a terrible person. All right. Well, folks, with that being said, thank you for watching, and we look forward to running into you next week. Have a wonderful day. Music provided by LoFiGirl.com. Artists include Tenno, Daydreaming, BVG and Mondberg, Insomnia, WYS, Snowman, Bcalm and Banks, Because. Episode cover art created by Matthew Kirshner. Podcast logo and main cover art provided by David Clawwitter. Audio engineering done by Sascha Schaudies